Affairs commentator Victor Gao is joining us from Beijing. And Victor, I think people here in the West are watching these celebrations in Tibet with some great interest. That's partly because the narrative here is typically that China is somehow mistreating the people of Tibet. And I wanted to get your take.
Well, first of all, I think there is no denying, if anyone looks at the profound economic transformation that has been taking place in Tibet over the past 5 decades in terms of accessibility, the roll-up of infrastructure, including railway, highway, airports, etc., building up of schools, and also the popularization of mobile communication, solar energy, etc. You name it, you have a long list of all the achievements, making Tibet probably very advanced and developed compared with other neighboring countries, for example, Nepal, Bhutan, the northern part of India in general, etc. So I would say, in economic terms, definitely there is a profound improvement and huge uplifting of millions of Tibetans out of abject poverty. On the other hand, I would want to emphasize that the natural conditions in Tibet are very harsh and the environmental situation is very fragile. Therefore, in promoting economic development, especially industrial and manufacturing sector, we need to be very careful in achieving the economic goals, but while also protecting the environment and the integrity of the natural conditions in Tibet. Tibet is also the water supply for millions of Chinese in mainland China, but also to millions of people in South Asia as well as Southeast Asia. So I would say that, whoever who cares about the real situation in Tibet, either in Tibet or in other parts of China or throughout the world, should look at the realities in Tibet and also be, relatively speaking, objective in their comments about the achievements in Tibet.
Well, as we look at the imagery, there's no doubt that the imagery just breathtaking. But some of the statistics that we've looked at are pretty awe-inspiring. GDP in 1965, when the autonomous region was established, about 327 million yuan. That's about 51 million US dollars. Today, 92 billion yuan, or 14 billion US dollars. Per capita income, that's gone up. It's risen 39 times for people in urban areas, 42 times for people in rural areas. People in Tibet now living twice as long as they did back in 1965, about 68 years old. What do you think accounts for all of this? I mean, it's really dramatic.
Tibet in itself, naturally, geopolitically speaking, is relatively isolated from the rest of China as well as from, let's say, the Indian subcontinent, mainly because of the high altitude, the mountainous region, and the very inaccessibility in terms of transportation or communication. That has been changed tremendously. We now have the railway linking Lhasa, Tibet, and many parts of Tibet with the rest of the world. We're even talking with India about the possibility of connecting the railway connection in Tibet through Nepal all the way down to the Indian subcontinent. That means, I would say, in terms of the infrastructure and connectivity, Tibet, rather being the frontier region or the border region in a corner, it may actually become a hub linking the rest of China and the Indian subcontinent going forward in the coming years or decades. And I would say, if you look at this and the very high quality infrastructure projects, this really creates the means for people in Tibet to improve their productivity, because otherwise, without these major infrastructure projects and without a commitment to developing industrial sectors which actually suit the natural conditions in Tibet, especially, for example, tourism, then either Tibet would continue to be in isolation and also in very low level of productivity, or, for example, on a very aggressive, unrestrained economic development mode in Tibet may actually result in degradation of environment and long-term damage to the water supply, etc. So I think we need to be very balanced in coming up with the best approach to improve productivity, improving the living standards of the people in Tibet, but also protecting the natural conditions over there. If you allow me one more minute, I think, economic achievements in Tibet are recognized by most people who care to visit Tibet, but I think the Tibetan people, our Tibetan brothers and sisters, also are very much committed to Tibetan Buddhism. In that sense, they actually have very high level of spiritual pursuit. And sometimes there are Tibetan brothers and sisters who do not care that much about the economic transformation about Tibet. They care more about their spiritual freedom, religious freedom, etc. Therefore, I would say President Xi Jinping said the right thing. China needs to create a better environment whereby the people in Tibet can pursue not only their material betterment, but also greater freedom in pursuing their spirituality as well as religious freedom. This will be very important at present as well as in the coming years and decades to come.
Victor Gao joining us from Beijing. Thanks so much.